You're listening to the Backroom Beer League podcast with your hosts, Jacob, Nigel, and Greg. Bringing you your fantasy sports content recorded from the back room. To stay up to date, follow us at BRBL Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and rate the podcast to show us your support. Now, here's Jacob, Nigel, and Greg to talk fantasy sports.
We're recording episode 19 at 7:42 p.m. on Wednesday, July 15th. And this week's episode has our fantasy player spotlight, our 30-second thoughts on a variety of subjects, our most anticipated games in the return of professional sports leagues, and the mega contract, the monster contract that was handed out to QB Patrick Mahomes last week. We'll get into all that, but first, as we always have been doing, we're going to start with our fantasy spotlight. And this week in my fantasy spotlight, I chose a nut bar, and I say that the nicest way possible. But once you hear this name, you'll know why I call him a nut bar. Yasiel Puig. He's completely a loose cannon, but in a fantasy setting, is Yasiel Puig valuable? I think so. He's a nut bar, that much is certain, but his nuttiness doesn't necessarily affect his fantasy production for GMs who own him. Puig might not be the superstar everyone thought he was going to be originally, but last year he hit 267. He had 24 home runs. And that was between two teams, Cleveland and Cincinnati. He got traded to Cincinnati in the middle of the season, and that was over 149 games. So he's not your Mike Trout kind of stats guy, and not a lot of guys are. I mean, Ronald Acuna Jr. is pretty much just starting to kind of rival Mike Trout in terms of production in fantasy, but I think Yasiel Puig has definite potential to hit the top 100 fantasy baseball players if he wants to. And I have a few reasons for liking him going to Atlanta. He just signed a contract with the Atlanta Braves this week. And I think the most exciting thing about him going to Atlanta is that he hit really well in Atlanta's opponents' parks that they have this year for the adjusted season. He hit well in the parks that they're going to play in this season for the kind of adjusted quarantine baseball league. And he hit 291 in Philadelphia over 14 games last year, 318 in Toronto, and 357 over 5 games in Atlanta. So check this. He's going to be playing in Atlanta, very much starting in the outfield, just because Nick Markakis recently said, I'm going to opt out of the season. I'm not going to be playing outfield. Before this signing of Yasiel Puig, it was going to be Christian Pache, their prospect outfielder. To kind of sum this all up, he might not be the biggest producer stats-wise. As I said earlier, 267 average and 24 home runs last year. However, he's a good move for depth on your fantasy baseball bench. His reputation as a clown could help fantasy negotiations if you're trying to acquire him. And the risk here is relatively low if you get him for cheap. If you offer up, a few bench players, maybe a couple low-ranked pitchers for Yasiel Puig, I think you're winning, and I think he could actually surprise people this year. Even if his career average is only 277, don't expect the moon, the stars, but I think he could definitely help any fantasy team out this year, especially if the baseball season goes ahead as planned and we get a full fantasy season. So that's my player of the week.
I agree 100%, Jake. Definitely in depth move, this is good, but I think it's also a guy that you could if he's not on a team, pick up easy. If he is on a team, if you've drafted already, you could easily trade, very buy low, high reward chance. And even if your draft's coming, you could definitely nail him real late because a lot of people are going to look at that 267 average and not really clue into like places he's played and all that, and they're just going to be instantly turned off.
So yeah, Yasiel Puig, I mean, I feel like people were really too quick to negatively judge this guy. I always feel like he has been a quality player. And like Jake, you were listing off those stats against teams that he's going to be playing against a lot in Atlanta. And I really like the contract when it comes to the financial side of things. I think it's beneficial for both parties. And in a fantasy standpoint, all you can really ask for is for Puig to stay consistent. And I think he has a shot to do it in Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, even when he was hitting balls in Los Angeles early in his career, I mean, the one thing about Yasiel Puig is that he might have been a disappointment for all the hype that he got coming into the league. People thought he was going to be the next coming of Jesus there years ago because there was so much hype built up around him, kind of like, you can name off a few other players in the league that kind of got that same sort of hype. But the one thing I always found about Yasiel Puig is that, he might not be a superstar, but what he is right now is he's a really good second or third option for your outfield in fantasy, and he's really consistent at what he does and what he has been doing over the past few years. I mean, like I said, I listed off those stats, and he's a career 277 hitter, which bodes well for him hitting above average this year. So I mean, if you can get a 265, 270 average out of this guy and 12, 13, 14 home runs in a shortened season, I mean, that's pretty good, I think.
For my fantasy spotlight this week, I have Matthew Stafford, quarterback from the Lions. Coming back off one of the few injuries in Stafford's career, which was a back injury last year, I think the always reliable Stafford's going to come back with an extremely strong season in 2021. He's got a solid wide receiver duo with Galladay and Marvin Jones Jr., as well as a third slot in Danny Amendola. Galladay is also another unappreciated guy, led the league in touchdowns last year with shitty quarterback play. So with Stafford, I think both will go off. You're also going to have sophomore tight end TJ Hawkinson, who's loaded with potential, likely to take a big step. And then rookie running back, you also have Kerryon Johnson coming back from injury, but also rookie running back DeAndre Swift, who I thought was one of the best pure prospects in the draft. It's just nobody values the running back position in draft anymore. In that offense, I think Stafford, with that cannon on his arm, should easily go back gunslinging his way into a top 10 fantasy quarterback this year.
Yeah, it always made me a little upset when people would dump on Stafford so much only because he's playing for the Detroit Lions. I think that's extremely unfair. I mean, if you take Megatron out of the equation, I can't really name you a receiver that he had that is to the level that these elite guys are having, except like Aaron Rodgers. So that guy seems to provide with a dumpster for his wide receiver one and a garbage bag for his wide receiver two.
Don't talk about Tay like that.
Yeah, I made a boo-boo. I forgot about Tay. Anyway, but back on Stafford, it's like Marvin Jones Jr. had 1 year where he went off. And Galladay is this guy who's coming up in the league right now, and he broke through last year with like Jeff Driscoll as his quarterback, and what was it, David Blau? David, yeah, like that guy got outdueled by Trubisky in last year. So it's like I feel bad for Matt Stafford because he spent his entire career with the Detroit Lions, and he gets hate that he doesn't necessarily deserve, but that guy has an absolute cannon of an arm, and he's a warrior. When I think of Matthew Stafford, I always think of that video where he like dislocates his shoulder or breaks his collarbone, and then he goes out and leads a fourth quarter drive for them to win the game.
Oh, mine's when he goes on that scramble and absolutely trucks
Yeah.
that linebacker for the first down.
Dude's like
Always
he's
my
a
thing.
dog. Like he is like if he was given a better situation and put in a different franchise, like you're talking about a guy who could be in MVP conversations and he could probably have led his team to Super Bowls. It's just he's never had that opportunity in Detroit.
Yeah, I completely agree. As a Chicago Bears fan, and someone cheering for a team in the same division as Matt Stafford, I've always felt bad for him because I feel like if things had gone different and or a trade had gone down, something had gone down, and he found his way to Chicago, I actually feel like he would have had relatively good success in Chicago over Detroit, anywhere really. I mean, it's not the first time that we've seen Detroit ruin a player. I mean, you just go off the list. I mean, there's Herman Moore, there's Calvin Johnson, there's Barry Sanders. They've ruined players over and over and over in that franchise, and they've completely thrown away their I don't know, motivation for winning. It seems with their ownership, but if you think about it in the fantasy aspect that we're looking at, Athlon Sports has Matt Stafford projected at 4,210 passing yards for next year, 25 passing touchdowns, 109 rushing yards, and 10 interceptions. And that's on the Detroit Lions. And I have to say that's pretty damn good. Like you're saying, he has a cannon. He's a great QB, and it's really annoying to see him have to play out his whole career in Detroit and find such mediocre and you could say like there is no success. I was going to say mediocre success, but there's literally no success that he has really achieved playing his whole career in Detroit. I mean, it's sad, but if you look at it in a fantasy aspect, he is a good fantasy option, solid QB. If you wait too long to get a QB, you pick Matt Stafford up. He's 32 years old, but he'll get you what you need.
Exactly. Like Greg said, people hate on Stafford, but this man has been one of the top consistent quarterbacks in the league. And I think coming into this year, you're going to get the same thing. People are going to be like, oh, we didn't, they're going to forget back injury, all this. I think Stafford's going to come out, sling the football like he always does, and you're easily going to be able to get a great quarterback later in the draft with him.
Definitely.
So, I'll move into my pick of the week, and mine comes out of the NBA. He's a forward for the Atlanta Hawks, and it's John Collins, someone who I think is an extremely underrated player in the NBA. I mean, when you're looking at the Atlanta Hawks, for a team and a franchise that has struggled so much and has suffered so much heartache and loss, and a team that's just been downright doo-doo for years. The last time I remember the Hawks even being irrelevant was when they had that literal 1 year when Jeff Teague and Kyle Korver and Damari Carroll decided they wanted to be relevant basketball players and all-stars, and then Al Horford went off. Their entire starting lineup made the all-star game. But now, after years of struggling, you get guys like John Collins, Trae Young, Cam Reddish that are going to turn this around. And as much of a superstar that Trae Young is, I think that you can put a lot of the future of the Hawks on the shoulders of John Collins. This is a guy that doesn't get talked about very much. And it's a guy who averages 22 points and 10 rebounds a game. A guy who defends extremely well in the paint, can go out to the perimeter, and can guard a guy basically of any size. He's extremely strong, but there's one thing that worries the life out of me when it comes to John Collins, and that is, and I'm going to quote Stephen A. Smith, stay off the weed. I'm I'm worried that this guy is going to end up being the next Josh Gordon, which I don't think anybody wants. I think it would be a wasted career if this guy isn't an all-star. He's physically gifted. He can shoot the mid-range. He can defend. He is the piece that's going to put the Hawks over the edge. I really think so. Because Trey will be Trey. He's the second coming of Steph Curry. But you always need, the Warriors have shown this, that you need a player like John Collins. They have Draymond Green that does everything. And this is a guy who, with time, will be getting double teamed more. We'll be able to kick it back out to Trey and Kevin Horter and Cam Reddish, guys that can shoot the three ball, which is extremely dangerous for teams in their division. Honestly, from a fantasy standpoint, though, John Collins is an absolute stud. A guy that goes out and plays 30 plus minutes a night, averages over 20 points and over 10 boards per game. And in the last 10 games that John Collins played before his drugs and all that, this guy was he averaged, I think it was 32 points in the span of 10 games. He just went absolutely off. And if he can keep himself to be consistent, he is an absolute starting power forward on your fantasy team. And I think this guy should be going in the top 3 to 5 rounds of every fantasy basketball draft out there.
Yeah, I looked on online and found a few key stats on John Collins when I seen you had him in your notes, Greg, and I just looked at the last number of games, like you were talking about there, that he played. He was averaging 32 points per game pretty much, and I think it was. And I don't usually tend to use Yahoo Fantasy Sports as some sort of legible source for statistics and stuff. But on their projections, for every game that he played within a span of maybe 20 games or something, he was beating their projections every single time, with the exception of maybe 4 or 5 games, I want to say. So he was beating the projected point per game totals that they were putting up before he played every single time, with the exception of maybe 4 or 5 games. So that's pretty incredible for someone who is cruelly underrated, like you say. And you were saying too that he's averaging 22 points per game on a season-wide basis. He is 10.1 rebounds per game, 1.6 blocks and 33 minutes per game. And he's in Atlanta, which is a team on the come-up. And honestly, I really like to get players on teams that are going to be good in the next few years, especially in the sport like baseball. I play a lot of fantasy baseball, and I like getting pitchers, hitters on a team like Seattle, who I think are going to be a really good team in a few years. And when you get guys that are in a rebuilding organization that are going to be a threat in the future, everything just seems to trend up. And I really think that's the case here with John Collins.
Yeah, I don't know how common dynasty fantasy leagues are in basketball, but I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure that some of our listeners are in them. John Collins is an absolute money player to have on your team. I mean,
Definitely.
the worst thing that happens is that he keeps, having a too good of a time, falls out of the league. Best case scenario, this guy is a star for you for the next 10 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially if you're drafting now in, say, a dynasty league, and like you said, I think they are a bit less common in basketball. I think pretty much standard practice in fantasy basketball is you redraft pretty much every year, because it's it's such a hit or miss sport. I think like baseball is minor leagues and stuff that are more important stuff. But if there was such thing as a dynasty league in basketball and you were drafting this year, you can pick John Collins up pretty late, stash him away, and then you got yourself a starting player on your team. And
normally for this segment, we pick guys that are underrated. And a lot of people can say that, yeah, well, Greg, like John Collins was in a lot of people's starting lineups. He was owned in the in the 90th percentile of fantasy leagues. And I can say, well, yeah, this guy, it's no secret that he's talented, but there's no question that this guy should be there. This guy has to be in your starting five unless you have a franchise type power forward.
Well, I can, praise John Collins. I had him on my fantasy basketball team, and when he played, it was great. But, again, that 25-game suspension, I had to drop. I didn't have an option. With Steph also being at my lineup, I had to drop John Collins. But when John Collins played, he was easily a guy I could start consistently.
And, I think John Collins maybe underrated is the wrong word to use in a sense, because I think he was, like you said, he was owned in like the 90th percentile of fantasy leagues. And, a lot of people know who John Collins is, but I don't think he's talked about in the same way, and his value isn't talked about in the same way as, like, I heard people talking about Spencer Dinwiddie. And I was one of those people, actually. I jumped on the Spencer Dinwiddie hype train when he was doing like pretty decently in Brooklyn all year. But like John Collins outdid his numbers, a vast majority of the time that he was playing, really. Like, I think that John Collins is noticed, but he isn't talked about as much as he should be.
Exactly.
And so to move on into our kind of weekly rundown, the two topics I mentioned earlier, the Monster Mahomes contract, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our most anticipated sports games in the upcoming reopening of leagues. Just a little bit, not too much, not too long on this, since we have a few other segments to get to. But to start with the Mahomes contract, last week it was announced that Patrick Mahomes will be signing a 10-year, $503 million deal. The deal makes Patrick Mahomes' contract the richest in sports history, surpassing Mike Trout's $426.5 million deal with the Los Angeles Angels. Is 10 years too long? And do deals like this set players up for failure? And using an example here of someone who got a monster contract and then didn't really live up to it for the years down the road, Bryce Harper in Philadelphia, he got a boatload of money, and he's only kind of starting to move his feet on his production. I think that 10 years is too long, even though Patrick Mahomes is on top of his game. He just won a Super Bowl. He's the most valuable QB in the league right now. I really do think deals like this set players up for failure, because automatically, once you put $500 million on the table, $500 million into one player, they immediately have the expectation that they're 100% going to live up to $500 million worth of money. And I just don't see Patrick Mahomes doing that, 7, 8, 9 years into the contract. Will he still be good? I'm sure he'll still be a great quarterback. I'm sure he'll still have the arm that he has today, but I just 10 years is a long time. I'm going to be 30. We're all going to be 30 when that contract expires, which is 32.
Dude. Let's not even go there.
I'm going to be honest. For Patrick Mahomes, this contract is fucking amazing. He just if he plays the way he is right now for the next 12 years, then great. The Chiefs won and he won. He cannot lose this contract. The only loser of this contract possibly is the Chiefs. And even then, Patrick Mahomes is arguably the most gifted quarterback we have ever seen touch the football field. I look at guys like Aaron Rodgers, who we said that about before. And even now, Aaron Rodgers is 36. And yeah, he's shown signs of regression, but he still does shit that nobody else can do. I think as long as Mahomes stays healthy, both sides of this contract will look good. The only other thing I have to say is the Chiefs are right now playing Madden without fucking salary cap on. The way they're throwing money around.
Well, Boys, like when this first was done, when this deal was first done, I sat there and I thought to myself, I was like, damn, like 10 years? Like, what are they like? Patrick Mahomes, good for you, dude. I don't blame the guy like one bit. Like, not at all. But the Chiefs, it's so risky in my eyes. But then I started thinking, I was like, you know what? In 10 years, 12 technically with his 2-year deal, Patrick Mahomes is only going to be 36 years old, right? Right now, Aaron Rodgers is 35, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's 36.
Anyway, if he is, he is. Phillip Rivers is 37. Ben Roethlisberger is 37. Drew Brees, 40. Tom Brady, 42. Now, is this 10-year deal risky? Yeah, because I mean, there's always going to be a chance in the sport of football for Patrick Mahomes to go out there for a play next year, Von Miller come off the edge, crank him, and tear his ACL and his MCL in his right leg, and he's done for life. There's always that risk, and I know you're laughing, Jake, but like that is a legitimate thing that could happen.
It is.
Now, another thing that could happen is Patrick Mahomes wins 4 more MVPs. The Chiefs win 3 to 4 more Super Bowls. He goes down as the greatest quarterback of all time, and they have one of the most dominant dynasties in sports history. Number one thing that I worry about, though, they managed to re-sign Chris Jones, which was insanely important to keep that defensive line straight and how it is. But when it comes time for Travis Kelce to be signed, when it comes time for Tyreek Hill to be signed, when it comes time for Eric Fisher, Mitchell Schwartz, when it comes time for those guys on their offense to be signed, are they going to have the money to do it? That's where I get worried.
Listen, if we have any Chiefs fans watching, I'm going to give you this from a Packers fan who watched the 2010-11 Packers offense. Enjoy it while it's here, because you think you're riding high, but then about 4 years down the road, your defense is starting your local Applebee's bartender at cornerback 1, and shit just goes downhill. So enjoy it while it's here.
Aaron Rodgers has seen 3 generations of Packers teams. Do you know what I'm saying? And
yeah, he came into the end of Brett Favre with Donald Driver, and then he led his with Jordy Nelson and them, and now he's coming into the LaFleur era with, guys like Tay, who's I guess going to be on the bit of the older side, but now like Jordan Love, those kind of guys.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And at the end of his deal, Patrick Mahomes is going to be in basically the same position and age that Aaron Rodgers is in right now. And frankly, this guy needs to prepare himself mentally and physically to go through hardships and overcome adversity like Aaron Rodgers has.
Only thing I've got for Patrick Mahomes avoiding injury is I think he has the best awareness since Aaron Rodgers. Just his ability to avoid contact and make throws that you shouldn't just be able to make in positions you shouldn't be able to make. It's just watching him reminds me so much of watching Rodgers in 2011, where you'd think you'd have him and from one leg while getting tackled, he'd throw a sidearm 20 yards down the field.
Patrick Mahomes on the injury side of it doesn't really worry me. It's the lack of offensive support when it comes time for everyone to be signed.
Well, I think
as long as Andy Reid's head coach, I'm not concerned.
I think that I stand by what I originally said, obviously. Like, I don't really like these super huge deals. I mean, I get why the Kansas City Chiefs did it. I get why they did it, because why wouldn't you, after winning a Super Bowl with the most talented quarterback in the league right now, arguably, and your franchise player, why wouldn't you want to break the record for the richest sports contract in history? Why wouldn't you want to take the credit for signing someone for half $1 billion. It's a crazy figure. And I think that the thing that, like you were saying, Greg, and you kind of alluded to, the problem with these deals is that they're never hometown discounts. They're never, shorting themselves a little bit so that the team can have a guaranteed long-term success and build a super team, because you're paying him a good chunk of money every year, and now that you've re-signed, there's just not going to be enough money to go around, like you're saying, to sign the Kelseys of the world or the other players on the team that make this Super Bowl winning franchise so great right now. And I just worry that 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years down the road in this contract, you're going to be eating this contract every single year without a discount. And are you going to be able to then repeat success if you don't win the Super Bowls in the first 4 or 5 years of this contract? Are you going to be able to build a team around Patrick Mahomes, as good as he might still be in the 7th, 8th, 9th year of this contract? Who knows? The money might not be there for the Chiefs to do that, but they'll probably make the money back in jerseys bought and tickets bought and all the merchandise they're going to sell around Patrick Mahomes in the next 10 years. So, I mean, they invested a lot. It's a big risk, but I get why they did it. And honestly, I don't really have a problem with the Chiefs doing it. I like to see them succeed because it was a long time coming for them to win the Super Bowl this year. And, I mean, kudos to Patrick Mahomes, because he could very well be the most talented QB to ever play the game if this 10-year contract goes well.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
And to segue away from the sport of football and to the 3 sport leagues that are going to be reopening as of August 1st. I think I read something today that on August 1st, there's supposed to be like 71 games scheduled between the NHL, the MLB, the NBA, and the Major League Soccer, which none of us watch. But
Yeah,
71
that can go to hell, basically.
Going from 0 games in any league to 71 games in the most viewed sports leagues in the world, that's a big uptick. And I just want to know what the most anticipated games are for you guys. What matchups are you most eager to see now that the NHL, the NBA, and the MLB are coming back?
Get me some fucking playoff hockey. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for hockey. Stanley Cup finals are some of the, I don't think there's a rival playoff outside. Like, the energy in the Stanley Cup playoffs is unreal. And I am unbelievably excited to watch how some of these teams come back. Specifically, the team I'm rooting for, the Colorado Avalanche, because I want to see Nathan MacKinnon bring a cup back to Nova Scotia, and I'm excited to see if he can keep dominating, which I think he will.
I mean, this is kind of a homer take for me, but I'm excited to see the Penguins play the Flyers in the first exhibition game. I mean, I know that it won't be a complete roster or anything like that, but I do think it's going to be exciting to see where they are both at. But I can't wait for the Penguins to mollywop the Canadians. I'm so freaking excited to watch how the Western Conference plays out in the NBA. Specifically the race for 8th. Very excited to see how that plays out. Because I'm looking at those the Pelicans and Grizzly practice film, and they look locked in. But Damian Lillard is arguably the clutchest player in the entire NBA. I'm pumped for that. The Grizzlies-Pelicans matchup, fire me up.
Yeah. In terms of actual specific games, I don't really know if I have a list of specific games. I'm really excited to just watch the round robin tournament, even if it's not like an elimination tournament. I just want to see the Capitals play hockey again and see how they fare compared to how they were ending this season, because I know they were just taking a complete nosedive. They were getting blown out by Buffalo. They were taking hits every single game they played, and I hope they come back with a little bit of fire. I mean, I hope Ilya Kovalchuk comes back. We only seen him in a handful of games before the season had to stop. I hope he comes back and has a fire lit under his ass and say, holy shit, I can actually win a Stanley Cup here in my late 30s. 5 years ago, you asked me that question. Are you ever going to win a Stanley Cup in your life? Well, I'm probably going to be playing hockey in Moscow or St. Petersburg by that time. This is the time for Ilya Kovalchuk to prove to himself, holy shit, I'm actually a decent hockey player, and I don't have to just take a one-way ticket to Russia every 3 years. I'm really excited to not even see the Yankees play, because if there's any of these leagues that I think could shut down before it ends, it's baseball, just because there's so much travel involved and stuff, and a bit worried about it. Obviously, I'd love to see the Yankees play again, see Garrett Cole hurl against Max Scherzer on opening day against the Nationals. It's going to be a great game. I can't wait to watch that. Even if I get 10 games of baseball to watch, and if they had to shut it down, I'd be fine with that. But I'm really excited to watch the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm not a Blue Jays fan, but I am a Canadian. And I just keep thinking about this lineup.
Bo Bichette.
Oh, knows.
I'm a big Bo guy. I love watching Bo Bichette play baseball.
I know.
I'm not a Jays fan, but I love watching that kid play.
You have Bo Bichette. You have Josh Groshans. You have Austin Martin.
I want to see Martin too.
Vladdy Big Butt. You have
Vladdy Trunks.
Gurriel, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. You have Kevin Biggio.
Ryu.
You have Hyunjin Ryu. You have Nate Pearson. There is so much talent, so much young talent, and even old talent in the case of Ryu that is going to be showcased in this team. And I'm just really excited to see what they do in terms of playing their younger players and where they move their players, because I know Vladdy Big Butt, we always talked about, he's not the most nimble player on the field. He's getting moved to first, folks. So that means that Josh Groshans is probably going into third base. Austin Martin might go into third base too. So I'm excited to see that. Basketball, the Knicks aren't going to be there.
I'm excited to see the Rockets play. I want to see if Russ and Harden can keep up what they did at the end of the year.
I want to see if Russ and Harden can go I want to see if Russ and Harden can go the whole tournament without getting COVID again. Yikes!
Wow! And I'm excited for baseball because I can't wait to see Garrett Cole. Actually, fuck that. I can't wait to see Chapman, if he comes back, throw an absolute heater at Jose Altuve.
Did you see the picture of Chapman, man? Buddy looks like Popeye.
Oh, man. No, Chapman's been
Buddy's going to be out there throwing 112.
You've seen the pictures. You've seen the pictures of Popeye Chapman, but did you see the souped up Jeep he has? That it's bulletproof. It has a lift kit.
No,
it was oh my god!
Did you guys see fucking slim down CC Sabathia? Who every time I see him, I'm like, you look good. You could pitch again. Come on, buddy. I need my favorite Yankee back. Oh, CC's my boy.
No, the reason.
Now my boy's Tanaka.
CC always explained this. I think he mentioned it on his own podcast after he retired. He said, "Mass equals gas. You got to be big if you want to throw gas." And I mean, good for CC to lose all that weight. He looks great right now, and I honestly, I feel like he could come back tomorrow and beat a few Astros players, and then say,
Raptors got smacked so hard in the mouth with their schedule. If they can keep the 2 seed over the Celtics,
that'd be huge.
That would be insane, because they
have a fucking tough game.
The Lakers, the Bucks, the Celtics twice, the 76ers, the Clippers. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely just. Yeah. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see. I know this isn't a game, but a player that I'm extremely excited to watch is Marc Gasol. Because that guy lost about 20 pounds. He looks like he did when he was in his prime. Now, I don't expect him to be in his prime, but like I want to see if that guy can be the Mark from last year, because he's been struggling this year.
Man, Harden lost a bunch of weight too.
Yeah, but
Just speaking of weight loss, I saw some pictures of Harden and he's slimmed down. I don't know if that's a good thing.
I think the quarantine was like the best thing that ever happened to like all players in every league, because I know a number of players from every single league, whether it's hockey, basketball, baseball. A lot of people chose to work out and just sweat off some pounds before they had to go back, and I think it could actually change the landscape of how these playoffs end up.
Harden lost all that booty weight.
I can tell you one thing. I watched the inter-squad games the other night, yesterday actually, and Vladdy Big Butt is still Vladdy Big Butt.
I
sadly.
did too. Buddy,
I don't think Vladdy
all cheeked up on a Tuesday afternoon. How does that go? That's what he is.
I think with that, I think double cheeked up on a Thursday afternoon. I think that's a great transition. We'll end it there and we'll go to the 30-second thought segment, because I feel like Greg is going to go So I cut down the 30-second thoughts list a little bit, Nige, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 topics here. Each of us are going to give our thoughts in 30 seconds or less on the given subject, whether it's just a team name, whether it's a question. So the first, and we'll start with you, Nige, and then we'll go to Greg, and then we'll go to me. The first topic here is the Cleveland Browns. So if you want to start, Nige.
Dark horse playoff team for sure. A lot of people are just going to say, oh, it's the Browns. Oh, we gave them hype last year and they sucked. But they finally have a proven coach in Kevin Stefanski, who did great things in Minnesota. They've shored up the offensive tackle positions by signing Conklin and drafting.
Worse.
Yeah. No, it might have been worse. I can't exactly remember.
Sorry. Jedrick Willis, isn't it?
Yeah, it was Patrick Willis. Yeah. They added Hooper. Everybody shits on OBJ saying he had a bad year last year, even though he went over $1,000 and he had an injury. Baker's on a prove it year, so he's gonna have a competent coach for the first time in his career. Baker's got to smarten up. I think that offense goes out, and I think that's an easy dark horse playoff team.
That was a long ass 30 seconds, but I'll give it to you.
Sorry.
Okay, my time starts now. Okay, I'm kidding. So the Cleveland Browns, I think I'm gonna kind of agree with what you said, Nige. I think that you said Baker Mayfield's on a prove it year. I think their entire offense is on a prove it year. In my eyes, Garrett's not going to walk around using his helmet as a battering ram. He'll be back, just sign a new deal. The defense has to be consistent and stop. It's got to be able to do its job. The offense has to come out and be consistent, and I definitely think they're a dark horse playoff team.
Yeah. My 30 seconds, I really kind of have to agree with both of you. I know I shit on the Browns a lot, but I do think that Baker is a bust candidate. But I do think the new coaching, they had a decent draft. Grant Delpit, like any prospect, he looks good. I think he's going to help the team. And maybe they're a dark horse playoff team. Maybe they're just short again, but I really do hope for some success in the end for Cleveland, because I think they deserve it. The fan base deserves it, and I do hope they make the playoffs. The next topic is the New Orleans Pelicans. What do you have to say about it, Nige?
I think at least 3 years minimum, they're going to be a great team in the NBA. Traded away AD, though AD's good. The amount of pieces they got, Zion looks like a certified stud. They're doing this rebuild really well. I think they keep it up. They're going to be a top dog in a few years.
Zion's going to take care of his knees. If Zion takes care of his knees, Lonzo Ball needs to continue his growth. They need guys like Josh Hart to step up. Drew Holiday is going to become a great leader, which I think he is. Brandon Ingram has to turn into a straight up superstar. I say in 3 to 5 years, this team is in the Western Conference Finals if they can stay together.
The Pelicans, what can I say? I mean, they're a perfect mixture right now of good drafting and sucking for long enough to get good draft picks. And they made some good trades. All you have to do is look at their lineup: Drew Holiday, Zion, Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, JJ Redick. You look at that lineup, you say, how can that not be a championship worthy team in a few years? I think that they have the stuff to prove that they can be a championship team in the next couple of years. And I think that as much as people have clowned on them and clowned on a team like Atlanta in the league, I think that they have a really, really bright future ahead of them. And I really hope Zion just comes out swinging next year in the league. The third topic on the list is the Tampa Bay Rays.
Super underrated. I think one of, if not the best rotation in baseball that nobody talks about. Shitty situation where they're at and how their fans don't appreciate them, but I think another dark horse playoff team possibly in the MLB this year.
I think that the Tampa Bay Rays I also think they're an extremely underrated team in the MLB. I do, however, think they're in a very sorry situation because they are in the AL East. The Red Sox are always hot and cold. The Yankees' time's right now, and this is not a homer take, this is just facts. The Blue Jays' time is in a couple of years. They're going to be stuck behind these teams that are on the come up.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm going to go over my 30 seconds here, but I think the Rays are a great organization. They have Wander Franco coming up the ranks. They have a great pitching roster coming up in the minors. They already have a good pitching rotation in the league right now. They have Glasnow, they have Snell, they have McKay, and they're going to have McClanahan in a few years, and they're going to have Boz in a few years. They have such a deep organization and prospects. They've done good drafting. They're a super team in their own right, but they've just never had enough oomph to get the job done. And I think you're right, Greg. I think that they're going to be stuck behind the Jays. Sadly, I don't think the Yankees are going to be as big of a threat as they are right now in a couple of years. I think the Jays' time is slowly approaching, and I think that the Rays are going to have a really tough time beating them out in the division to take the title and to maybe even take a World Series away. I really don't think they're going to be able to. If they were in the West, it would be a different story, but I think there's just too much in division and in conference competition. The next topic is, how many years do players like Sid and Ovi have left in the National Hockey League? I think Nigel wrote this. I think he means specifically Sid and Ovi. How many years do you think they have left playing in the National Hockey League?
Like a 5 max? That hurts. That hurts to say because these are the guys I've grown up watching, but I honestly think they've got like 5 max.
Yeah, Nige, I think 5 years sounds about right to me. I think it really depends on the separate organizations. Like, both of the guys are still producing at a very high rate, and in my opinion, I think that it's important for both of them to stay around as long as they possibly can because they're generational players, and generational players are the ones that train future and up-and-coming generational players.
I'd say 5 in Ovechkin's case. I'd almost say 4 in Sidney Crosby's case because, Sidney Crosby is a year younger than Ovechkin too, but have we had the same injury history with Ovechkin that we have in Crosby? Absolutely not. Crosby has been injured every single year, it seems, the past 2-3 years, and he was out for a significant run this year. He's getting older, obviously. Injuries tend to pile up later in players' careers in any sport, but I just think that Crosby doesn't have the legs necessarily to go as far as Ovechkin, even being a year younger than him. And that's what I think. Here's a tailored Nigel question: will Giannis leave the Bucks?
I'm gonna go. Not that I actually care where he goes, but part of me is just thinking this guy loves Milwaukee and he's gonna stay. I'm gonna. You know what? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I'm gonna place a bet he's gonna stay. I'm gonna say he's gonna stay.
All signs point toward him staying, but if he does leave, I will tell you this, he will go to the Toronto Raptors. It's the only team in the entire NBA that I can see him joining, with his relationship with Masai Ujiri, with Pascal Siakam, the large Greek community in Toronto. Do I think he'll leave? It's questionable. I think he could. I think he could. He might not, but if he does, he will be a Toronto Raptor, and it all depends on if he thinks he can win with the Bucks.
I've always thought that Giannis is, obviously, he said right now that he doesn't want to leave Milwaukee. And what player would say when they have years left on their contract that they want to leave, that they want to get out of where they're playing, that they want to get out of the place that they're pretty much holding up on their own? I mean, Giannis is the pillar of the Milwaukee team, and he's their franchise player. Why would he ever say that he wants to leave? But the fact of the matter is that Giannis has so much power in his hands when he is able to leave that I don't think he's going to be able to resist it. If Giannis can say, oh, I can go anywhere I want. I want to go here. I want to go there. I can go anywhere. I think he's going to leave Milwaukee if especially if he doesn't find success there in the year left remaining on his contract. And I think that he'll leave, and maybe he very well could end up in Toronto, like Greg said. So we'll have to wait and see, obviously, but I think he might leave. And the last question we have here is, how much longer before a Canadian team hoists the Stanley Cup again? That's a good question, Nigel. I like that one.
I'm giving it 3 years till I think if there's a Canadian team that's going to do it, I think the Edmonton Oilers and that core of batshit crazy players they have are in like 3 years going to be hoisting a cup. If it's not them, Vancouver is the only other team I could see doing it.
I'm going to say 3 to 5 because I'll agree with you, Nigel, that I think it'll be the Oilers or the Canucks. The Leafs, I have no faith in them. The Habs have a solid future. Still don't think it's going to amount to anything in the next couple of years, but I'm going to say closer to 5.
Geez, boys, I'm going to have to be the contrarian here. I mean, you guys, a lot can change in 3 to 5 years, and I really think that some of these Canadian teams have what it takes, and they're close right now. I will not say Toronto Maple Leafs because I really do not think they have anything there because they have great offense, I'll admit it, but they have no defense and no goaltending. They're not going to win a cup with Marner, Matthews, and Tavares. But Canucks, I really think they could have a cup in 1 to 2 years. If they, I'm being bold here, I know, and I think that the Oilers could have what it takes to win this year. Yes, I said it. I think they can win the cup this year.
No, that's not ridiculous. That's not ridiculous. That's fair.
I think they could win this year, especially given the time they've had off. I think McDavid is better now. He's healed. Draisaitl, I think
they need another defenseman.
What they need is Mike Smith to stand on his head.
But to be fair, as long as you have Connor McDavid, you have a chance. That the best player in the NHL, without a doubt.
They do it. Am I correct in saying that Mike Smith needs to stand on his head? Do they? Because they did the swap. Is it Cam Talbot in there, or is it Mike Smith? Because they did the swap with Calgary.
It was Mike Smith at the end of the year.
Yeah, okay. He got to do something better. He got to be better.
Mike Smith is never going to get better, Nige. I'm just saying he has to stand on his head.
Gotta have faith.
Sad reality is he's never going to get better. But that takes us to the end of our 30-second thoughts segment, and that's all we have left on the podcast. Do you have anything else to say, boys, before we wrap her up?
Let's get sports back on the road. Don't crap on athletes who are choosing to opt out. Don't be that kind of a dickhead. Let's just be happy that we're probably going to have sports back and enjoy ourselves.
Yeah, I hope everyone's staying happy and healthy, honestly. Like, I hope the sports can come back. I don't want them to be forced to come back because of greedy ass owners. I hope all the athletes stay safe. I pray to God that no one breaks the NBA quarantine. I'm scared about baseball. I think hockey can do it, but we need sports back. But if you're an athlete, don't risk your family's well-being for this. For the love of God.
Yeah, I pretty much second both of those thoughts. I mean, obviously everybody wants sports back. Obviously, we've been craving sports for months now. We've been crying for any sort of inter squad game, and we're finally getting it with the Blue Jays. We've been crying for any sort of action to watch on TV. But I just hope it's done safely. I hope it's done right. I hope players don't, risk their family's safety and their own safety unnecessarily if they don't feel like it. And I hope it goes well. I hope, all the leagues pull it off somehow. But I hope we have a successful quarantine sports season. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to baseball, basketball, and hockey. So I definitely think we'll be able to go back to maybe a weekly podcast routine again once sports kicks up. We've kind of been doing a bi-weekly thing here where we've been part of it's because we've been busy too. All three of us have been busy because it's summer and we have jobs and shit. But I think we'll be able to maybe make it a little bit more regular with more content to talk about. It's pretty dry right now, boys.
It is. We're fishing in a pond with very few fish.
Yeah, exactly. That wraps up the show for this week. Remember to follow our social media at BRBL Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Subscribe to the Backroom Beer League on YouTube. And thanks for listening. We'll see you back here in the next episode.